Did you ever hold a Morgan silver dollar in your hand and wonder what its past was, what its history was, where it's been, what it was spent for, who held it? Well, I do. I do it all the time, actually, and that's what we're going to cover in this episode of the Silver and Gold Stack Attack. Join me on a trip back into time. What do you say there, YouTube? Welcome to another edition of the Silver and Gold Stack Attack. As always, I want to thank you for stopping by and checking out the video. And if you'd like to help support this channel and make it grow, feel free to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Hit the like button and comment down below. All three will help the algorithms with this channel. I also want to say welcome to the new subscribers. We've recently gone over 200. Thank you so much for all the new folks who have signed up and subscribed. And thank you to the original ones who have been here all along and continue to come by and visit and comment. Appreciate you too. So Morgan dollars. Yeah, these might be the best of both worlds when it comes to numismatic and stackers alike. So stackers are going to love that 90% silver because that's what they're made of. We got 90% silver in each coin. Numismatic folks are going to love the history behind them and the years they were minted, which is 1878 to 1904. And one more glorious run in 1921 when they brought them back. You have to understand that these coins can go for big bucks, depending on condition and year. You also have to consider the history behind these. Did you ever stop, hold one in your hand and just start to wonder where it's been, who had it before you? I mean, this one here is in 1921. You think about it. It's exactly 100 years old, so who knows where this one's been? You know, who held it? Was it part of a bank robbery? Was it used in a poker game in old Chicago? You just don't know. You don't know where this thing has been. And that's the beauty of it. There's so much mystery behind it. I think that's part of the appeal. So that's what we're going to go over today. We're going to go over the history of the Morgan. Some really fascinating years that this coin was issued. You think about it. These go back to the Wild West and the development of transportation in the United States. The airplane, the car. A lot of history behind these dates. A lot of history. So I'm going to go over a few tidbits for each year that the Morgan was issued. So sit back, grab a beer, and let's take a trip through time and see where these coins have been and what was going on. Hang in there. 1878. In California, American West outlaw Black Bart makes his last clean getaway when he steals a safe box from a Wells Fargo stagecoach. Also, the Lincoln County War begins in Lincoln County, New Mexico. Billy the Kid and the Regulators are prominently involved. And the phonograph is patented by Thomas Edison, even though it was actually invented in 1877. 1879. Infielder William White plays in one game for the Providence Grays and becomes the first African American to play in Major League Baseball. Doc Holliday kills Mike Gordon in a New Mexico saloon, his first of only 2 confirmed kills, despite his reputation as a stone-blooded killer. And Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. In 1880, Wabash, Indiana becomes the first electrically lighted city in the world. Amateur astronomer Henry Draper takes the first ever photograph of the Orion Nebula. And the University of Southern California opens its doors to 53 students and 10 faculty. 1881, James Garfield, President of the United States, is shot by lawyer Charles J. Guiteau. The gunfight at the OK Corral occurs in Tombstone in Cochise County, Arizona, and Billy the Kid is shot and killed by Pat Garrett outside of Fort Sumter. 1882, Old West outlaw Jesse James is shot and killed by fellow outlaw Robert Ford. Morgan Earp, brother of Wyatt, is assassinated by outlaws while playing billiards in Tombstone, Arizona. And Charles J. Guiteau, the assassin of President James A. Garfield, is hanged. 1883, Buffalo Bill's Wild West show debuts in Omaha, Nebraska. And Western outlaw Black Bart gets away with his last stagecoach robbery. And Congress authorizes the first steel vessels in the United States Navy. In 1884, the Washington Monument was completed. Also, the United States Naval War College is established in Newport, Rhode Island. And Mark Twain wrote The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. 1885, the Statue of Liberty arrives in New York Harbor, but it wasn't dedicated until 1886. Also, the first skyscraper, which was the Home Insurance Building, was built in Chicago, Illinois, and former President and Civil War General Ulysses S. Grant dies in Mount McGregor, New York. 1886, Apache war leader Geronimo is surrendered to the U.S. Army after decades of warfare. It's pretty cool. If you go down to Pensacola, Florida at Fort Pickens, you can actually see where he stayed for a spell. Despite being a prisoner, he was very well respected. In New York Harbor, U.S. President Grover Cleveland dedicates the Statue of Liberty. And pharmacist John Pemberton begins to advertise Coca-Cola, which, ironically, actually did contain small traces of cocaine. In 1887, in Argonia, Kansas, they elected Susanna M. Salter as the first female mayor in the United States. Also, North Carolina State University is established as NC College of Agriculture and Mechanic Arts. And in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, the first Groundhog Day is observed. 1888, the Great Blizzard of 1888 on the East Coast kills 40 people. Susan B. Anthony organized Congress for Women's Rights. And George Eastman introduced roll film Kodak cameras for the first time. In 1889, at high noon in Oklahoma Territory, thousands rushed to claim the land in the land rush of 1889. Within hours, the cities of Oklahoma City and Guthrie are formed, with populations of at least 10,000. The first issue of the Wall Street Journal is published in New York City, and Grover Cleveland signs the Enabling Act admitting North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, and Washington as U.S. states. 1890, in West Point, New York, the United States Navy defeated the United States Army 24-0 in the first Army-Navy football game. And at Auburn Prison in New York, William Kemmler becomes the first person to be executed in the electric chair. And the Wounded Knee Massacre took place in South Dakota as the United States 7th Cav tried to disarm a Native American camp when shooting started. A total of 153 Lakota, Sioux, and 25 troops are killed. 1891, the Wrigley Company is founded in Chicago. Yeah, that's the same chewing gum company you were thinking of. And it's also the namesake of the stadium where the Chicago Cubs play. When I was in Chicago, I had a chance to visit this building. It's absolutely amazing. It's Gothic in nature. It's old school. It is one amazingly out-of-place building. It's like stepping back into history. Also, Carnegie Hall had its grand opening and first public performance with Tchaikovsky as the guest conductor. And Jesse Reno invented the first working escalator, and it was installed as an attraction at the Old Iron Pier on Coney Island. 1892, the famed Dalton Gang, while attempting to rob two banks in Coffeyville, Kansas, is shot up by the townspeople. Only Emmett Dalton, with 23 wounds, survived to spend 14 years in prison. Also, the father and stepmother of Lizzie Borden are found violently murdered in their Fall River, Massachusetts home. And Ellis Island began receiving immigrants to the United States on New Year's Day. About 700 immigrants passed through, with the first being 15-year-old Annie Moore from Ireland. 1893 brought us the Panic of 1893, as a crash on the New York Stock Exchange started a depression. Also, the U.S. Marines intervened in Hawaii, overthrowing the government of Queen Liliuokalani of Hawaii. And Thomas Edison finished off construction of the first motion picture studio in West Orange, New Jersey. 1894, Milton S. Hershey established the Hershey Chocolate Company in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. The first Billboard magazine was published in Cincinnati, Ohio by William Donaldson and James Hannigan, and Coca-Cola was sold in bottles for the first time. 1895, American frontier murderer and outlaw John Wesley Hardin is killed by an off-duty policeman in a saloon in El Paso, Texas. The gold reserve of the U.S. Treasury is saved when J.P. Morgan and the Rothschilds loaned $65 million, a lot of money back then, worth of gold to the United States government. They were working on, from early on, keeping the United States in debt. It's still working to this day. And Catherine Lee Bates' lyrics for America the Beautiful are first published. 1896, the Ford Quadricycle is the first Ford vehicle ever developed. It was completed, eventually leading Henry Ford to build the empire that put America on wheels. John Philip Sousa composed his magnum opus, The Stars and Stripes Forever. And Butch Cassidy and the Wild Bunch committed their last robbery as a gang, robbing a train in Oklahoma. 1897, the first Boston Marathon was run by 15 athletes and won by John McDermott of New York. The Klondike Gold Rush began when the first successful prospectors arrived in Seattle, and the Boston subway opened, becoming the first underground metro in North America. 1898, Annie Oakley promotes the service of women in combat situations with the United States military. On that same year, she wrote a letter to President McKinley. The Spanish-American War and the Battle of San Juan Hill. American forces captured the San Juan Heights near Santiago de Cuba. Theodore Roosevelt memorably led the charge of the Rough Riders. The war would end later that year. And the U.S. Maine exploded and sank in Havana Harbor, Cuba, killing 266 men. 1899, now that the Spanish and American War is over, the U.S. would receive the Philippines, Samoa, Guam, and Puerto Rico as a result of the Treaty of Paris that took place in 1898. The U.S. kicked in about $20 million to Spain to make the deal complete. $20 million back in 1899 equals about $659,200,000 today, so no small amount of money. Gold was discovered in Nome, Alaska, and the Newsboys strike took place when the Newsies of New York City went on strike. It was a youth-led strike made up of news carriers who wanted fair wages and compensation. 1900, the Gold Standard Act is ratified, placing the United States currency on the gold standard and establishing gold as the only standard for redeeming paper money. It stopped bimetallism, which had allowed silver in exchange for gold. It was signed by President William McKinley. Also, famous train engineer Casey Jones died in a wreck in Vaughn, Mississippi while saving all the passengers on his train. And the Galveston hurricane made landfall at Galveston, Texas, eventually killing an estimated 8,000 people in the deadliest natural disaster in U.S. history. 1901, baseball's American League declares itself a major league. And American anarchist Leon Czolgosz shoots President William McKinley at the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York. McKinley would die 8 days later. And the U.S. stock market crashed for the first time. 1902, Theodore Roosevelt became the first American president to ride in a car, and it was a Columbia Electric Victoria. That ride took place through Hartford, Connecticut. The Electric Theater, which was the first movie theater in the United States, opened up in Los Angeles, California. And the first college football bowl game, which was the Rose Bowl, between Michigan and Stanford, took place in Pasadena, California. In 1903, Ford introduced its first automobile, the Model A. Dr. Ernest Fenning of Chicago would become the first owner. Also, the Wright brothers accomplished their first successful flight at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. If you're ever in that part of North Carolina, be sure to visit. You can still see the original steel rail that the glider was launched off of. It's pretty wild. And the first box of Crayola crayons is made, containing 8 different colors. 1904, the supposed last year of the Morgans, before 1921 came around. Pitcher Cy Young of the Boston Americans threw the first perfect game against the Philadelphia Athletics. And the Great Baltimore Fire took out 1,500 buildings, causing $100 million in damage. And for $10 million, the United States gained control of the Panama Canal Zone. So, after a 17-year break, 1921 brought the return of the Morgans. For one last year, one final run. And in 1921, the first radio baseball game was broadcast. Harold Arlen announced the Pirates-Phillies game from Ford's Field over Westinghouse KDKA in Pittsburgh. Also, the Tulsa race riot took place in Oklahoma, with close to 300 being killed and 1,250 homes destroyed. And last but not least, White Castle Restaurant opened up in Wichita, Kansas. It would become the foundation of the world's first fast food chain.
All right, that is going to wrap this up. If you made it all the way through, kudos to you. That was a hell of a trip through the past, to be sure. It really makes you wonder where your Morgans have been, no doubt. And that's what keeps the human race going through all these difficult times and this crap that we're enduring now. It's imagination. You have to have imagination. It helps you adapt and overcome to present times. So you guys have a great, great week ahead. Again, I want to thank you for stopping by. Stay safe. And best of all, get stacked. Peace.